Hello, once again, this is Dennis Drennan. I'm the facilitator for the Sheer elective series, and we're studying the book of the Revelation, and the study is called Blessed Hope, and it's a series by Dr. Robert Godfrey from Ligonier Fellow from Ligonier Ministries. And today we're going to look at the splendor and fall of Babylon the Great. And let me just emphasize that we had some technical difficulties last week and we're not able to record. So we're not going to have the privilege of having our discussion in this video. So we will just deal with the questions that are in there, and we'll just answer them as we go. So I thank you and ask you to just be patient with me as I deal with some of the technical things here. Here's the scripture for today's lesson. Then I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues. For her sins are heaped high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Pay her back as she herself has paid back others, and repay her double for her deeds. Mix a double portion of her in the cup she mixed. As she glorified herself and lived in luxury, so give her a like measure of torment and mourning, since in her heart she says, I sit as a queen. I am no widow, and mourning I shall never see. For this season her plagues will come in a single day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be burned up with fire, for mighty is the Lord God who has judged her." And that's Revelation 18:4-8. So here we go with Dr. Godfrey, and just as an aside, today happens to be his 80th birthday. So just think about him as he celebrates 80 years and many years in ministry.
Well, we have reached the seventh cycle. The end is in sight, but is not yet. We have yet a ways to go, because this is a long cycle with a great deal in it that we will want to consider carefully. And just as we've seen certain exciting tidbits along the way in previous cycles, like 666 and the Beast and Armageddon, so in this cycle we finally come to the 1,000 years. And we'll then be ready to look at what John is revealing to us in terms of the 1,000 years. But first, we want to take a look at how this seventh cycle is set up as a chiasm. And we'll see it begins with the woman Babylon and ends with the woman, the church, the bride of Christ. And we'll see that it speaks about judgment on Babylon, and then it speaks about judgment on the beast and the dragon. Then it talks about the lament for fallen Babylon, and it talks about the celebration of the victory of the Lamb. And in the very heart of it then is praise to God for what he has done. So you'll notice that sometimes in a chiasm, the corresponding elements are similar and supportive. Sometimes they're contrasting, but they're on a similar kind of theme in a way. So this encourages us to see that I think this cycle really is arranged chiastically, and it also reinforces in some ways what we've seen in terms of the other cycles, because as this cycle begins and ends with the woman, and particularly ends with the woman, the church, the bride of Christ, it draws us back to the fourth cycle in the middle of the book, which was about the woman in her glory as the church and yet struggling, and then draws us back to cycle one, which is about the seven churches. Not so much identified as a woman, but still all interconnected in meaning. So cycle one is about the church in first century struggles, but with perennial problems. Cycle four is about the church through the whole history of the church struggling. And now at the end of cycle 7, we'll see the church glorified at the end of history. So all of this seems to really tie together as the books of the Bible do and should be seen as doing. So here we are looking at this 7th cycle, and it begins with this picture of the great prostitute. Chapter 17, verse 1, then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls. So here again, we see the tie-in from cycle to cycle, 7 bowls of judgment in the 6th cycle. Now one of those angels comes to John and says, come, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on the earth have become drunk. So here is the great prostitute in cahoots with the kings of the earth. I think that's a Greek word, cahoots. In cahoots with the kings of the earth. So this is very much political power, I think. The great prostitute is linked to kings. These are political alliances that are going on here in service of immorality. And having promised to show the great prostitute, he, the angel, verse 3, carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. A scarlet beast. We haven't had a scarlet beast before. I think this is a conflation of the red dragon or the fiery dragon and the beast from the sea. So again, it reinforces the notion that these are symbols. When you have symbols, you can take them and rearrange them in certain ways, and they continue to bear a similar meaning. It's not that we're constantly getting new actors here. We're having the same basic actors being described in different ways. And what we're seeing here is how Babylon, the great prostitute, the political corrupt power, is in alliance always with the dragon, the beast, religious corrupt power. And that's being represented here for us. Verse 4, the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. So here she's presented as, at first glance, splendid, dressed in expensive colors, adorned with expensive jewels. Here is the world's effort at splendor. Did you see that recent show in New York? They had it on the news, the Met something and gala, and all these women in all these crazy, I'm sorry, if you have one of those dresses, I apologize. They struck me as crazy dresses, lavish. You can't imagine the tens of thousands of dollars these things cost. And this is the way the prostitute is, just decked out in all of the world's finery and glory. And in her hand, she has a golden cup full of abominations. See the paradox. The greater the effort at splendor, of power, of success, the deeper the reality of corruption. That's what's pictured here. Verse 5, and on her forehead was written a name of mystery. Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of the earth's abominations. Now, we've had several names written on foreheads before here, haven't we? We've had the name of the Father and Jesus written on the forehead of those who are sealed for God. And we've had the mark of the beast on the forehead or on the right hand, sealing those who belong to the evil one. John has probably drawn that image from the turban or the mitre that the high priest wore when he ministered in the temple. Because you remember from the turban of the high priest, there hung a stone before his forehead. And on that stone was engraved the words, "Holy to the Lord." And it symbolized, of course, the holiness of the priest in his service of God. It was carved as if a signet ring, so it would be almost stamped on the forehead of the high priest, "Holy to the Lord," set apart for the Lord. And now that imagery has been picked up in the book of the Revelation in a variety of ways to say either we are holy to the Lord, that's the mark on our forehead, or the mark on our forehead reads, "Unholy against the Lord." And that's what is being represented of those who dwell on earth and of Babylon. And her name was a mystery. Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. Well, what's the mystery there? It seems pretty plain. Well, maybe the mystery, if there is one, is who exactly is Babylon again? We've heard Babylon talked about. Well, we haven't had extensive introduction to Babylon. And now all of a sudden we're going to see who this Babylon that we were just told back in chapter 14 had fallen, who is she really? And what we're going to learn is that she is full of the earth's abominations. But it's not just a general sort of political corruption and wickedness. Verse 6, "And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus." We've noticed the name Jesus isn't used very much, but here it's used very powerfully. We don't want any mistake about this. This isn't a symbol, this is a reality. Those who have lived and died for Jesus have been persecuted by this power, this bloodthirsty power. "When I saw her, I marveled greatly, but the angel said to me, 'Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with the 7 heads and the 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction.'" Now, the beast, you remember, is the representation of false religion in the world. And did you catch the irony of what is said about this beast? He was, and he is not, and he will go to destruction. Aping God and missing all the way around. He was, and God was. But God is, and he is not. And God is coming, and he is going to destruction. So the contrast is really sharp there and powerfully expressed. So here we have this picture, and we're told then, going on in verse 8, "And the dwellers on earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come." So the dwellers on the earth still haven't got it. They still marvel at the beast. They're still drawn to the beast. They haven't seen his failure. And that's the sad reality in which they find themselves. This calls for a mind with wisdom. Now we're beginning to get an explanation. The 7 heads are the 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. Now, what was always said of Rome? It was a city built on 7 hills. And that surely is an allusion here. And it's not too much to say, I think, that in the first century, Rome was the great expression of Babylon. But you notice it does say 7 mountains, not 7 hills. And I think probably that's intentional to say Rome is one of the manifestations of Babylon, but not the only one. There will be many manifestations of Babylon, and I think that's presented for us in what follows. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but are to receive authority of kings for 1 hour together with the beast. So who are the 10 kings? can't imagine the amount of time that's been given to try to figure out who the 10 kings are and the various kings that have been proposed. And, we've already said so often in the book of the Revelation, sequence is not chronology, but sequence is elaboration on the basic point being made. I think the basic point is Babylon is 10 kings. 10 kings are all the kings that are going to come along and make a mess of things. And so the point is not to name the 10 kings one by one, but to recognize there will be any number, and however powerful they appear, they don't amount to much. They've only got an hour. Remember how important time is in this book. They've only got an hour. Each one of them, only an hour. They come and they go. Kings think they're important while they're there, but they're gone in a moment. And that's what's being given to us as a reminder here. The 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast. These are of one mind. They're all united. They're all one. They're all the same thing. And they hand over their power and authority to the beast. They may not even know it, but they're serving the deeper religious reality of existence. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those with him are called and chosen and faithful. If you went through the book of the Revelation and just collected the crystal clear statements about who we are and who Jesus is, it would be a wonderful collection. Maybe we ought to do that sometime. But what a wonderful clear statement this is. They make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them. Why? Because he's Lord of lords and King of kings. You can have 10 kings, you can have 20 kings, you can have 100 kings. The Lamb is King of kings. And he's Lord of lords, he's in charge, he's in authority. He will be victorious, as will be those with him who are called, chosen, and faithful. That's a wonderful combo. Have you been called to the Lamb? Sure you have. And if you've been called to the Lamb and come, then you can know you were chosen by the Lamb. And if you're chosen by the Lamb, you will be faithful to the Lamb. What a wonderful description of Christian experience, called, chosen, and faithful. And the angel said to me, the waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. So this is political power all over the world. And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitute. They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose by being of one mind and handing over their royal power to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman that you saw is the great city that has domination over the kings of the earth. You see the picture there? What's one of the great restraints on political power? Evil political power, corrupt political power. They all fight with each other. They all devour each other. And how often that's been the case in human history. When the church, facing great struggle and difficulty, has suddenly seen the persecutors overthrown, maybe not by better people, but at least for a time there's a breathing space. I always think of the repeated image in the Psalms where it says, those who dug a pit for us to fall into have fallen into it themselves. And that's sort of the way God mocks them in history. The Lord will have them in derision. That's the promise. That's the declaration. All these people who think they have so much power, so much authority, so much accomplishment, they all destroy one another. And the worse they are, the more quickly they destroy one another. And so this is a powerful picture of the Babylon, the woman who sits and is described as apparently so terrifically powerful, but in fact not so very powerful at all. And the glorious promise here is that all of this power will ultimately be restrained until the words of God are fulfilled, till he accomplishes his purpose, till he's done what he set out to do. And that is the truth. And then we move in episode 2 into the 18th chapter, the first 8 verses. And here we find the judgment pronounced on Babylon, first 8 verses. So let's read that together. Babylon is fallen. After this, I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was made bright with his glory. And he called out with a mighty voice, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great," citing those words already we've heard in Revelation 14. "She has become a dwelling place for demons, a haunt for every unclean spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, a haunt for every unclean and detestable beast. For all nations have drunk the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality, and the kings of the earth have committed immorality with her, and the merchants of the earth have grown rich from the power of her luxurious living." Then I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues, for her sins are heaped high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Pay her back as she herself has paid back others, and repay her double for her deeds. Mix a double portion for her in the cup she mixed. As she glorified herself and lived in luxury, so give her a like measure of torment and mourning, since in her heart she says, 'I sit as queen, I am no widow, and mourning I will never see.' For this reason her plagues will come in a single day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be burned up with fire, for mighty is the Lord God who has judged her." Here's the judgment. Judgment to be utterly desolate, a dwelling place fit only for demons and unclean birds. This is the symbolic picture, to be sure, but of utter desolation, of utter abandonment. She who is so proud, she who is so confident, she who would never be cast down. She who gave herself, twice we're told, to luxurious living. I think a lot of poor people in the Roman Empire were resentful of all of the money that flowed in taxes to support courts that were corruptly luxurious. And you can feel that here, the resentment of political power that serves only itself. And the promise here, the declaration here, is that on Babylon and all the kings who have been represented by her and consorted with her, they will be destroyed, they will be removed. All of this will pass away. And in the midst of this judgment, the severe word of judgment, comes also the warning, doesn't it, to us as God's people. "Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues." Again, I think this is not a call to physical separation. This is not a call to join a monastery or to become an Amish farmer, tempting as that may be at moments. This is a call to separate ourselves from sin, to separate ourselves from the way she lives, to separate ourselves from all of her self-centered indulgence. That's what we're being warned against. And once again, we can see that the promise is that all of this arrogance, all of this apparent power, all of this apparent success will come crashing down. Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She is judged. That's the end. There's an end coming. And again, however great the persecution is that the people of God have to face in every age. This is a reassurance. This is a comfort. This is a promise. It will not go on. It will come to an end, and there will be a terrible judgment that falls upon it. So we've reached the end of this second element of the seventh cycle. We've seen the woman in her pretended splendor, and now we've seen the judgment upon her, and the next time we'll come back and look at the lamentation, because it's surprising. There are some who are sorry to see her go, and we'll look at that next time.
The chiastic structure of Revelation's seventh cycle is interesting. We'll talk about the woman and the judgment, lament, and praise, and then celebration, judgment, and again the woman. So we will see the various things that happen in this particular chiasm. Now, if you just started with us, a chiasm is sort of an outline of the particular section that we're dealing with. Dr. Godfrey sees chiasms throughout the scriptures as he teaches, and there are a number of them here in Revelation. This is just one of a number of them. But as you go through the study, you will see the chiasms. So that's the structure, and we're going to see, we have seen how the woman at this point is Babylon. The woman at the end of this cycle will be the bride of Christ and the church. So keep those things in mind. Is the scarlet beast of Revelation 17 one of the beasts seen before or a different beast? What is the relationship between Rome and Babylon? Um, Dr. Godfrey thinks that Rome and Babylon are pretty much one and the same. That you see Babylon revealed in the things that were going on in Rome, and various aspects of what he explains throughout this video. What does it mean that there will be many manifestations of Babylon? Well, what that means is that this is a symbolic look at Babylon, and this is showing that there's going to be many ways that Babylon is revealed, is manifested throughout the history of the church. And therefore, if it's the history of the church, it's the history of mankind, because that is it is the story of the church, but the church is indeed Christ's church. So is the main thing in terms of the world. So, but there will be many manifestations. We will see Babylon revealed in many ways. How does Dr. Godfrey summarize the judgment that falls swiftly on Babylon? Well, he says it's going to happen in a day. The judgment will fall in a day's time. Now, again, look at these things symbolically. It might be that it's going to be quick, so it might be quick in a week. I remember Operation Desert Storm. It was over in just days. It was very quick. The same thing can be said if you remember the '67 Israeli war. It was a 7-day war. It was over quickly. Now, that's what this is talking about, but this is talking about how the luxury and everything that we see in Babylon is revealed throughout the history of mankind. How does the warning of Babylon's fall offer hope to the people of God? Um, the warning is that um, our hope is in Christ. Our hope is in his reign. Our hope is in the fact that he is in control, he's in charge. Um, And even though Babylon has sort of been in the forefront of everything that's been going on, its fall will be the fall of Babylon will be uh, seen just quickly, just very quickly. Revelation 1:8 and 17:8. Let's read those. I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, says the Lord, who is and was and who is to come, the Almighty. That's Revelation 1:8. The beast that you saw was and is not and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition. And those who dwell on the earth will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was and is not and yet is in Revelation. How do these verses highlight the beast's inability to compete with God? Well, we see that the beast is going to ascend out of that bottomless pit, but he's going to go to perdition. And those who on earth will marvel. This is going to be a very surprising thing, but their names are not written in the book of life. Their names are not written there from the foundation of the world when they see the beast that was and is not and yet is. So the beast is really finite. The beast is not going to be able to continue to compete against God. He won't, because God's in control. It's just like we said about Armageddon. They came there and they did not fight because they knew it was hopeless. They knew they could not beat God. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. These are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are called chosen and faithful. What is the point of the 10 kings mentioned in Revelation? These are 10 kings that are going to rule throughout history, and they really don't have the kingdom, but they might rule, but they don't have much authority, for it's 1 hour. And again, that's a short time with the beast. They're of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast, and they will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome. For the Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are called chosen and faithful. So here's the thing. In this passage in Revelation, it's talking about 10 kings who do not have ultimate power. They haven't received their kingdom yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour of kings with the beast. And again, we're looking at this in a symbolic way, and they give their power and authority to the beast, but they come up against the Lamb, and they are overcome. The Lamb overcomes them. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins and lest you receive of her plagues. How is the call for God's people to come out from Babylon best understood? Well, the idea is don't get sucked into those things of the world. Don't get sucked into the luxurious living that Babylon has. We find that she makes the statement, uh, I have luxury, I have all these things, and I will not mourn. And so she is just rejecting everything about God. And so the people need to come out of that. And that's why we need to be aware of what's going on in the world. Discuss different approaches that Christians sometimes take when it comes to separating ourselves from the world. Some have become monks, gone to monasteries, separated themselves out from the world that way. Some uh, uh, have been like the Amish, where they go out to their own places. They separate themselves from the world. They don't use anything that is connected to the world. So they don't use telephones. They don't have electricity. Now, they do have electricity that they need to have when it comes to the regulations that are in place for dairy farming and things like that. But as far as depending on it themselves, they don't have it. And it's interesting because uh, for the longest time, phones were not part of the um, uh, uh, world of the Amish. And if you would go through Lancaster at that time, there were payphones, and the Amish would be lined up using the payphones to conduct business and do different things. But now in the world of cell phones, they're not connected because they're on the cell network. So they will many of them will use cell phones. What do you find helpful in these approaches? Well, if you find a way to separate yourself from the world is is really um, it can be beneficial in the sense that you are living according, say, to Romans 12, where it tells us not to be conformed to this world, but to be transformed. So we need to live to glorify God, um, to love Him and enjoy Him forever. And as we do that, our standing in the world will change. It'll be different. And we won't participate in all the various things that the world tries to offer to us. It's unhelpful to completely separate ourselves from the world because then we have no platform to share the gospel. It's probably the biggest thing that is unhelpful. What forms the center of the chiastic structure of Revelation's seventh cycle? It's praise to God for what He has done. What detail at the beginning of Revelation 17 ties the sixth and seventh cycles together? An angel with a bowl. What kind of corrupt power does Babylon primarily represent? Political power. With what has the woman Babylon become drunk? Blood of the martyrs. Throughout the book of Revelation, sequence consistently communicates chronology. That's false. We've already said that. The book of the Revelation oftentimes is describing things that are happening concurrently, but because of the way that our minds work, they have to be separated out. But it's not consecutive. Over what duration of time will Babylon's judgment take place? One day. It's going to be a short time. It's not going to be hundreds of years. It's going to be a few years, if anything. It might only be days, but Babylon's judgment will take place. So the next lesson in 19 is the wicked lament and the saints rejoice. And this is about the fall of Babylon. I want to thank you for taking the time to be a part of our Sheer Elective series. We have the classes online in a Zoom call on Sunday mornings at 9:30 a.m. So if you send me an email and request it, I will give you the link to come into the class live. If you enjoyed viewing the class, please subscribe to the YouTube channel Dennis Drennan for all our classes in the Sheer Elective series. And might I tell you, we have been doing this since the year of the pandemic, when we were not able to meet as a group for Sunday school. And I started doing these as an evenings class with my Sunday school class. And so we started recording these clear back in 2021. And so we've done a number of these, and there are over 200 videos of classes that we have done, mostly through Ligonier, but we have also done a couple of other things. One other thing is How Then Shall We Live, with Francis Schaeffer. So again, if you enjoyed, please subscribe to the uh, YouTube channel, Dennis Drennan. And if you would like to join us in our worship service, we are available on YouTube, Facebook, Boxcast, and on our website. Thank you. Have a good day.